If you want to check out snippets from my own cartoony sci-fi comic series, Smacked in the Head the Animated Series, hopefully crowdfunding soon, there's a link in the description below. Is it too late to still get in some kicks on James Mangold's, thank you Culture Casino, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Degradation? Man, just no. So welcome to my no-view review quick sketch video. This should have been out a long time ago, but you know, life happens and then I got sick. Anywho, I refused to see this show after the homicide that was Star Wars under Disney and Kathleen Kennedy. This movie had almost no chance of being good. I say almost because for a short time Steven Spielberg was still attached to direct it. Eventually he walked away and they announced James Mangold. You know, that James Mangold of Logan fame. You know, that Logan. That filmed nicely enough funeral dirge of a movie where once great exciting heroes were turned into miserable for 2 hours and then died. So naturally, of course, Kathleen Kennedy would pick him to helm a rip-roaring adventure starring one of the most beloved cinematic icons living as a miserable divorced alcoholic. I don't understand how you can look at these two people and their histories and voluntarily walk into the theater expecting to see a good movie. Awful. God, I find the story choices in this movie so offensive. Killing Mutt off screen is vile, dude. It comes across as so disrespectful. Even J.J. Abrams joked about killing Jar Jar and putting his bones in the deserts in The Force Awakens. It was weirdly wise of him not to do that. And who would have thought that Jar Jar would not actually be the worst character in Star Wars when all was said and done? Whether you like Shia or not, that's just wrong. And don't even get me started on Phoebe Franchise Destroyer Bridge. Less said of her, the better. Even if you hated the last one, it at least still tried to have fun and gave the characters a happy ending. At least this movie had a driving through line or purpose to it. Charlie even says it.
Brutal couple of years, huh, Charlie? First Dad, then Marcus.
Seem to have reached the age where life stops giving us things and starts taking them away.
Indy is feeling old and like everything is slipping away. Life is taking everything and giving nothing back now. Then by the end of the movie, he has a wife and a son and a happy ending.
Well done, Henry!
Thanks, Ox.
Hey, in this new one, did you know that Indy's old? But he's like old and feeble and miserable and old. They couldn't even come up with an original through line. I'm not saying that Crystal Skull doesn't have narrative problems, but it's definitely not a James Mangold funeral dirge. Here's a part I particularly love.
Get that greaser!
It seems so fun. Probably has a tiny bit to do with loving that song since I first saw it in Clue.
I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife.
So I refuse to have this poison memory living in my brain. Sorry, Harrison. This is the only Elder Indiana that counts after the fourth movie, despite you guys doing George Hall dirty. I do think it's funny that everyone suddenly discovered that they love Short Round and they no longer hate Willie. What's up with that, man? I always loved Temple of Doom. It wasn't until I went to college that I heard people ragging on it. It's got one of my favorite movie villains and has some of the most iconic imagery from the series. The kind of imagery that if you're going to build a ride in a theme park, you'd rip off the design sense for. Despite being steadfast against this abomination, I was jazzed for Indy for like a month, especially with the complete real adventures playing on endless loop on different streaming services. I said what I said. I have it on good authority that I have the complete adventures. Not the complete adventures in Oh We Missed One where we utterly destroy the character you've come to love because Hollywood is run by a bunch of corrupt man-hating Anywho, on a previous live stream, I was trying to talk to my co-host about much better indie stories, rather than going to see this one. In that spirit, I started doodling him. And at some point, pretty much when I gave up on the statue and had a flash of inspiration deciding to add the Cthulhu idol I drew for the poster, I decided to make it tie into my old dream of making an animated indie movie that crossed over with H.P. Lovecraft. So behold, Indiana Jones and the Fall of Cthulhu! It could use some recoloring, but who has time for that? Here's the rough pitch I wrote back in the day. In early 1929, Indiana Jones finds himself in Arkham, Massachusetts, attending a lecture at Miskatonic University where he meets Professor Hinkle and his protege, a French student, René Belloc. Professor Hinkle takes to Indiana and invites him to look over some of the weirder artifacts that he's come across, thus presenting a strange green statue about 7 to 8 inches tall of a creature that can only be described as a cross between an octopus and a dragon. He reveals that a large box full of notes and research into something called the Cthulhu cult arrived on his desk one afternoon following the untimely death of Francis Wayland Thurston. Through the reading, Hinkle found the name of a Detective LaGrosse in New Orleans who originally possessed the statue and had agreed to let Hinkle study it for a time. Later that night, Professor Hinkle is discovered dead by Belloc in Indiana as 3 blubberous, bug-eyed men, more fish than men, flee the scene in the ruins of the upturned office. From there, they follow clues left behind as they pursue the murderers to the town of Innsmouth and barely escape alive. As the pair trek to different parts of the globe, they are befriended by Rosalina, and both men do their best to woo her. In the climax of the story, Belloc is offered up by the cult as a sacrifice, and Indiana and Rosalina race to the ancient city of I've never known really how to say it. Relier, to stop them before they can read from the Necronomicon and awaken the Old One, Cthulhu himself. Actually, putting the idol on a pedestal in a swamp would mean that Indy had gone with the Inspector LaGrosse and witnessed all that was going on. Whatever. Maybe we shake things up a bit and say there's more than one statue. They glow with power, and combining them would mean the end of the world. So I had forgotten about most of that synopsis. I had made it up for my art blog post back in the day. Link in the description. Hey, sue me, I made the poster on Sunday, December 15th, 2013, 9:51 p.m. Apparently. Man, I said it should take place in 1929. That would have made Indy 30. I think it might be better to set it so that he's in his mid to late 20s. That would make Belloc being a protege work better too. Regardless, this would all have to be kind of a one-off what-if side story. Sorry, I just like this action shot at the bottom. It's so small you don't really get to see it. It's simple, but I love him fighting residents of Innsmouth. And I like this big fishy guy with a sickle. He needs a big round floppy hat. And yes, the Necronomicon design is inspired by the Evil Dead version. So what do you think of that? Is it a fitting quick doodle for the movie that'll never exist that I would love to make? Let me know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.